Hey everybody, thanks for coming back. Today's day 4 and we're going to talk about hope. If you go to the file section, there's a sheet today labeled for day 4 and that'll help you follow along. It'll be a good place to take notes. So today what I'd like to start talking about is the hope, the good, the happy, the exciting side of all of this news, all this information that we're going to go over and have gone over. This is kind of the positive side of everything. This is where you learn how to move forward, how to make changes, and how to start seeing some difference in your life and your health. So today I want to talk very specifically about what your body needs and what whole health is, and then understanding what kind of foods really make a good solid diet for your body, and where I pull that information from, because there's a lot of conflicting information about that. So today I want you to understand the things that your body actually needs to be healthy. And so of course we need vitamins and minerals. We need oxygen, obviously. We need hydration. We need fat, very important. We need alignment within our nervous system and our spine. And we also need we need time for cellular regeneration, which I don't know if I've mentioned this or not, but that happens when we sleep. And so that's one of the reasons that sleep is so super important. And then we also need the ability to communicate on a cellular level and within our systems. And then we need a safe environment. We need to know that we feel safe, and we need good mental health. And so all of those things play a very big role in how healthy we are. So as you move forward and you start thinking about the different changes that you want to make, consider this list and utilize it to figure out make sure that you're not missing anything. So I have a lot of people who will tell me, well, I see a chiropractor and, you know, my back feels better and, you know, our allergies are gone and my kids' eczema is clearing up and all these kind of things, but I still get these migraines and, you know, we still get sick, we still get the flu, and we're still having this problem. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, so their neurological system's in check, and you know, it sounds like they were telling me they're eating really well. And I'm like, you're eating really well, but what's your stress level like? Are you sleeping? You know, so we'll have these conversations and we'll just start narrowing out this list in all truth. Oxygen is a big part of exercise. You know, are you getting enough oxygen to your cells? And I learned something the other day that I found really interesting, but our body actually omits fat through our breath. And so when we exercise and we accelerate our breathing rate, then we excrete more fat. And that's one of the reasons that exercise helps you burn fat so well, and it helps you lose weight so well, is it's a great form of excreting those fats. And I instantly thought, as I walk into the gym and all these people are, yeah, great. So anyway, can you breathe in fat? So anyway, evaluate this list as you move forward. As if you get stuck or you hit like a plateau and you're healing, start making sure that you're pulling in things from every angle. The only thing that's not on the list that I think should be on this list, I might even add it, is proper microbiome, right? When you start adding all these things in the right doses, that stuff starts to even itself out, but you need to encounter live enzymes on a regular basis. So I'll be sure to run back and add that to the list. So it might be on your list already. All right. So anyway, moving forward, the other thing that I wanted to make sure everybody understood before we continue talking about how to heal your body was what whole body health actually is. So I don't know about you guys, but since I've been going to doctors as a kid, it's, you know, you have a cold, I'm going to look at your heart, your lungs, your eyes, and, you know, and then maybe they might do blood work depending on what I'm dealing with, or run some sort of culture. But then they treat whatever they find within that area. They don't really investigate much further than that. And why would they? It's a simple cold. Well, let's talk about diabetes. When you have diabetes, they're looking at your insulin and they're looking at your pancreas. And a lot of times, and they're looking at your food intake, because that's where your insulin would come from. And so a lot of times they're not really looking past that. They're not really looking at, well, what's happening inside your intestinal tract? Do you have leaky gut? Or let's think about food allergies. They're looking at the skin and they're looking at the food that you're eating. They're not trying to figure out, well, why is your body reacting to this particular food? They just kind of take it at face value. So whole body health encompasses looking beyond that one symptom and going deeper and finding out where it's coming from and why it's happening. And to understand that whole body health means that our bodies actually can function well, and believing that we have the power to heal ourselves, believing that we have the power to function properly, is where whole body health starts. So many people think that they're always going to be broken and there's always going to be something wrong, and that it's just inevitable for things to start breaking down. And while to a degree that's true, as we age, things do start to function less well. The beauty of it is our bodies are actually designed really beautifully, and they can heal and they can function at much higher capacities than we give them credit for. And when we're paying attention to the whole system, the system as a whole, it's going to function better regardless. And so if you can start thinking of your body as an entire functioning machine, and you treat it that way and you help it in that way, you're going to heal better and you're going to function better. And so I encourage you to just start changing the way you think about stuff. If your foot hurts, maybe think about what else could be going on inside your system. And to give you an example, I was dealing with some knee pain a couple of years ago when we were seeing a chiropractor very regularly. And I would go to him and I'd be like, my knee just won't stop clicking. And I stand and it almost like hyperextends the other direction. I can't figure out what's wrong with my knee. My knee is really bothering me. I would ice my knee, I would put oils on my knee, and I would do all this stuff, and I really just couldn't figure out what was going on. And so he's like, oh, let me check it out. And so he feels it. He adjusts my ankle, and my knee was better. My problem wasn't in my knee. It was in my ankle. I had done something, and I remembered. I was like, oh, yeah, I totally remember tripping, and, it hurt my ankle. Well, in that process, I hurt my knee. And furthermore, I actually put my hips out. And so for a couple of weeks, he had been adjusting my hips and adjusting my hips and adjusting my hips, because he said when I walked in the door, he could tell my hips were out. I mean, it wasn't until I finally told him that my knee was really bothering me that he was like, oh, it started at her ankle. And then we fixed the problem. It wasn't an issue anymore. And so that was really interesting. And it's just kind of a good example of sometimes it's not always the one thing that's bothering you. Sometimes it's something else that's causing that to have problems. And so just go deeper. Don't stick with the surface. Like if you have a headache, maybe it's tension, maybe it's dehydration, maybe it's stress, maybe it's a lack of sleep, maybe you're dealing with something emotionally that you're not addressing. And if you would just address it, you would come back from it. Or maybe you pulled something in your back, or maybe you pulled something in your leg and it's affecting the muscles in your back and they're affecting your neck. Like it can be so many things. And so it's really worth spending some time listening to your body and evaluating what's going on in your life before you just take a Motrin and hide the pain. So just think about that as you move forward and you work to heal your body. So today we're very specifically going to talk about how food works inside of our bodies and the importance of which kinds of foods we should eat. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of a story real quick before we move into that and the important things that we need to eat. There was a scientist back in the early 1900s that his name was Pottinger, and he did a lot of tests on cats. He owned all these cats and he did tests on them. And this is, back before that was frowned upon and treated as cruelty. I don't laugh about that lightly at all. But regardless, the study's there and it's worth mentioning and it's worth hearing. So I'm going to continue to tell it. All right, so Pottinger had all these cats and he had done all these tests on them, and he had noticed that there were some cats that weren't bouncing back from some of the surgeries that he was doing very well, and he wanted to figure out why. He didn't want his cats to be in bad health. He loved his cats. And so he started to do a research study on their food. He was like, I wonder if this is what's affecting them. And so he had two groups of cats. One cat, they were both fed the same food, but slightly different. So one set of cats were fed raw milk, cooked meat scraps that he got from a local meat processing plant, and cod liver oil. And then another group was fed raw milk, cod liver oil, and cooked meat. So we had a raw meat group and a cooked meat group. Okay, the other two foods that they ate were the same. And so within 4 generations, some pretty substantial things happened between the two sets of cats. So the raw meat group, absolutely nothing changed. They produced the same They didn't have any physical ailments. They had same-size litters of kittens. The kittens didn't change from generation to generation. But the cooked meat group had a lot of changes. The first generation, by the end of the cat's life, they were starting to have a very long laundry list of problems, including things anywhere from inflammation to diabetes to heart problems to cancers and to all these different health issues. And the second generation, the cats were having those same laundry list of problems in the middle of their life. And by the third generation, the laundry list of problems were happening right away, from the beginning of the kitten's births, if the cat was even able to have kittens. At this point, several of the cats were unable to produce. And one other thing that he noted, which I thought was really interesting, is there was a huge behavior shift in the cats. Normally, the males were more aggressive and were more dominant. And during these 3 generations, and early on actually, he noticed a giant shift. The females became very aggressive, became the dominant ones, and the males became very docile, almost lazy would be the best word to describe it, unwilling to get up and do anything. In fact, they were most of the time almost unwilling to mate when the female cats were in heat. And the female cats were extremely aggressive, even out of heat. And so there was a lot of psychological changes, you could almost say, that happened within that group. And so as you move forward, as he moved forward, he realized, okay, these cats are fine. There's nothing happening here. But these cats, they're getting to a point where their litters are being born, stillborn, if they're getting pregnant at all. They would go through heat cycles and not even become pregnant. Or they would become pregnant and the babies they would not even be born. They would lose the babies. They'd have miscarriages, or the kittens would be born and they'd be deformed, or they wouldn't be born at all, or they'd be born and not survive. And so he decided that before he didn't have any cats left over here, that he would see what would happen if he changed their food to these cats' diets, if they would, the ones he had left, if they would heal. And so he did that. He changed their food to raw meat, and he noticed, and I didn't note too, the litters that were being born in the first 2 generations had changed in size and number. There weren't as many of them born, and their measurements and things were off a lot. So anyway, he also noticed, after he changed back to raw meat, that not only did some of the cats, instantly he noticed a big change in their health, but they actually were able to have kittens now. The behavior started to change and revert back to what they were. But he said he did notice, this is what I found interesting too, that sometimes it took 4 generations worth of reproduction with these cats for them to get a normal kitten. For a few of them it happened quickly, and for some of them it took 4 generations for change to completely happen. And so what we can take away from that is what I took away from that. We're not cats, obviously, and I'm not suggesting that you eat raw meat, but raw meat is what cats are supposed to eat. That is a diet that is actually meant for that animal. So when you think about our diet, think about the effects that our body's having, and that description of the breakdown of generations of health is happening in our society right now. I have a very good friend, actually, we just had this conversation last week. She said, my mom has all these problems and her mom has these problems. They're having them at the same time. So her grandmother is older and her mom is in this middle age, and she's having these problems. Well, now she's having these problems much younger. And so it happened exactly as it has happened in Pottinger's study. And it's happening in human lives right now. Generations are completely changing. We're in that 3rd generation. Some of us are in that 4th generation. Our children are a part of that 4th generation. I have chill bumps. This is why I do this. We can change this. We can start right now, and we can change our food back to what it was. And we can start working on changing our lifestyles as much as we can to be what our bodies need and what they're supposed to have. And we can see change. Will we ever completely heal? Maybe not. Will our kids ever completely heal? Maybe not. Will their kids? Very likely. So I really want to impress upon you the importance of making these changes. It's not about losing weight. It's not about healing diabetes. It's not about changing heart disease or curing cancer. All of those things could absolutely be side effects of these major changes. it's about our kids. It's about our future generations, and it's about finding change for them. I cannot express how passionate I am about this. So really seriously, take time and pray and consider what changes need to happen in your family, and consider that it's more than just you. It's your grandkids. It's your great-grandkids. It's our future. It's the healthcare of our future. All of that's going to change because we're going to make these changes. Okay. Whew. All right. I'm going to get off my soapbox. Get back to our stuff. All right. So one of the most important things that's been taken out of our diet that absolutely has to be changed and has to be put back in the right ways is fat. So I'm not talking Bojangles KFC fat. I'm talking coconut oil, healthy pasture-raised organic cows, and healthy pasture-raised organic chickens. I'm talking about the fat that comes from animals that are healthy, the fat that comes from fruits and vegetables that's healthy. Things like taking your omegas, whether they come from healthy fish or whether they come from healthy grains and seeds and nuts, avocados, very healthy oils like coconut oil or olive oil, which, just to clarify really quickly, coconut oil can be heated and it will still be healthy. It doesn't change its structure whatsoever. But if you heat olive oil, it literally becomes rancid. It becomes something different. And there's a lot more science to that than I'm giving it credit for, but it changes. So olive oil should always be eaten cold. And the downside to olive oil in our country, in the United States, our FDA regulations and what is allowed to be for producers to sell is not always 100% olive oil. A lot of times it's mixed with canola oil or vegetable oil. And so you just want to be really careful. And I feel like consuming olive oil in lighter doses is smarter, unless you're really confident of where your olive oil comes from and its purity. Unfortunately, we even have to think about that, right? So the other thing is grapeseed oil. Same situation as olive oil, though, that it can be mixed, and so you want to be careful with that. But grapeseed oil can be heated, so that's really nice. It's a good cooking oil. So coconut oil and grapeseed oil are good for cooking. Olive oil is good for like salads or very light, quick sauteing. And then ghee, which is a clarified butter, has all of the allergens that you would experience in milk are removed. Those proteins are gone and all of the sugar is removed. And so it tastes very much like butter, which is nice, and you can cook with it on high heats. You can't cook with regular butter, it changes, and a lot like olive oil, and so it should always be eaten cold. But butter has a lot of sugar in it, and so for a lot of people who are trying to heal their guts, taking in more sugar isn't necessarily the direction they want to go, and so ghee is a really great alternative. All right, so the other thing that you could, like I said before, healthy animals, cows in particular, have a great deal of fat in them, and so they're a really great way to go. Chicken, how many of you, hand raised, because I was one of them, when you went to the store and you bought chicken, you bought breasts, and that's all you bought. And you might sometimes buy the organic one and think, oh, I did really good this week. If you don't buy anything else organic and all you buy this week organic is meat, you're doing really good. And I encourage you, and it's not even necessarily that it's organic, but you really want to find pasture-raised animals. Most people don't realize this, and there's lots of documentaries on this, so I'm not going to talk about it too much longer, but cows are not supposed to eat grains. That's not what their bodies are made to eat. Their bodies are made to eat grass. And so if they're eating grains, they're actually extremely unhealthy. And that's why so many cows have lots of antibiotics in them, because they're eating things they're not supposed to eat. And then furthermore, the majority of grain that is fed to our cows, whether it's organic or not, is going to be genetically modified corn and wheat. And so those things are horribly wretched. I encourage you to go watch the movie Bought. It's a documentary, and I think they do it off and on for free. So anyway, I encourage you to watch that. It'll tell you more about GMOs. But there's lots of other things out there. And if you want more information, just post it on the Facebook page and we'll talk about it. So another thing is protein, which we've kind of already covered by talking about grass-fed beef, pasture-raised chicken, fresh, healthy fish. You don't want to ever buy farm-raised fish. Again, lots of information on that out there. And then pastured eggs. So any egg that you can buy from the grocery store generally is not going to be pasture raised. Free range kind of means that they've been in a little cage. It can still be inside of a building, and it can still be on a concrete slab. Chickens are actually supposed to eat protein. The lady I buy my chickens from, Erin, she's awesome. She has fantastic eggs. I love them. But her chickens literally live out in the woods, and they eat lizards. And sometimes she said, I think they found like baby birds, and like they're rough. They eat some pretty hardy foods. And so you don't want to eat chickens who are just eating grains, because that's not good for them. And it's not going to produce a good quality egg for you with a great balance of omegas. All right, so carbohydrates. The kind of carbohydrates we're supposed to eat should not come out of a box. They should not come off of, they shouldn't be coming from grains. Grains, actually, within 4 seconds of eating a grain, like any sort of bread or pasta or rice, any of those sort of things, 4 seconds after you put them in your mouth, your body begins to process them just like it would sugar. And so it recognizes it the same way, and it has just as hard of a time processing those things inside of you as it would if you ate sugar. Sugar, most of you know, I'm sure I don't have to talk about this too much, is incredibly inflammatory, and our bodies really aren't supposed to have it in the doses that we have it at all. And so when you're thinking of carbohydrates, think vegetables. All of our vegetables have carbohydrates in them. Some have more, some have less. Some vegetables you might avoid, and I don't mean completely cut out for the rest of your life, and some of you may. But if you can start avoiding them, you'd be doing really good. And that's things like all different kinds of potatoes, maybe carrots for a while, because there tends to be a high carbohydrate level there. And so those would be some things to consider. Tomatoes and red peppers, not yellow and orange peppers, but red peppers tend to have a lot of inflammatory response to them inside of your body. And so there's a lot of information out there on what vegetables are what. But if you'll just start eating more vegetables, you'll be doing really good. And then fruits. Fruits have tons and tons of carbohydrates, and sometimes too much. And so you might just start avoiding the higher sugar fruits and only having those every once in a while, and stick with the lower sugar fruits that are healthy, like apples and lots of berries, things like that. So if you're going to have beans or peas or lentils, if you really feel like you need to have some sort of grain like quinoa or anything of that nature, I encourage you to soak it. Your nuts, it's a really good idea to try to soak those too. But just to help you better understand why people soak things and why people ferment things, it breaks it down for us. So just to give you an example of corn, like everybody goes, well, corn's a vegetable. Corn's not a vegetable. Corn's a grain for starters. But let's just say that corn was healthy to eat. The fact that 90% of our corn is GMO pretty much just knocks it out of the park for me. I'm not going to eat it. It's the most heavily genetically modified and sprayed food on the earth that you can eat, aside from soy and corn are so bad. But if you're going to eat corn, think of it this way. When the Indians ate corn way back in the day, when we first met them, they would soak it sometimes for months before they actually ate it. They would ferment it so much that it didn't taste anything like what we eat now. It was a very different product, and it was something their stomachs could digest. And when you think about that, think about all the food that you take into your body. Your small intestines has to break it down. Your stomach has to start breaking it down with stomach acid. Most of us don't have great stomach acid balance. So if you're eating food that's raw or that's really hard to break down, your stomach first has to tackle it, which is hard enough. And then your small intestines have to start breaking it down. That's a lot of work for those muscles that are already strained and stressed. And so if you're taking in all these foods that are difficult for your body to break down, at some point they stop breaking it down, and some of it may get stuck or stay in there, or it just becomes this great environment. We've kind of talked about that. So when you're thinking about eating things that are hard for your stomach to break down, if it can be soaked or fermented, I would encourage you to try to do that. Try to get in the habit of doing that every once in a while, and start working towards that goal of learning what that looks like for you, and what type of processes you'd have to change within your day, because this isn't something that's just going to automatically fit perfectly. It takes extra effort, and it takes change in the way you think about your food. So we need fat, we need protein, and we do need carbohydrates, but it all needs to be very balanced. And I put on your sheets, I mentioned Weston A. Price Foundation. There is so much information through them that would really help you better understand the kind of foods that we're supposed to be eating. I would greatly encourage you guys to spend some time looking into that, and I'll post some links about it too. So that's all it for day 4. Tune in for day 5, guys. Have a great one. Ask lots of questions. Okay.